Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before I jump into the video, I just want to ask you guys, is there any mods you guys want to see on my truck? Until I hit 1,000 subscribers, I can't do any community posts, so this is probably the most effective way to ask. Today, I'm going to be doing a video on my Dasaita Android Head-Unit and the exact settings I have for the head unit and the different fixes I found. Also guys, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps to push out this video to other viewers, as well as also keep me motivated to keep making videos just like this one, because you know, it takes a couple hours out of my weekend just to film this video, go through, edit it and everything. And it only takes a second of your time and it's much appreciated. All right, so I think first we'll just take a quick look at the Z-Link settings I have configured. I really haven't come in here and messed with, honestly, very much. Now I've come in here, this is where you can essentially set up what each key does. I recommend just leaving these all alone because when I have come in here and messed with them, they don't really seem to work exactly how I want. So I've just returned everything back to defaults and haven't had much of an issue since then. Now, the first thing we're just going to jump into is the EQ settings here. Now, I personally have found that the EQ settings I have work best for me. Now, they really don't have any serious interior rattles, if any at all. And that was really my main concern when I was configuring the EQ settings because, yeah, hey, I can crank the EQ settings to the max. The problem is then the whole interior of your Tacoma is going to start to rattle over time. What I've got my EQ settings to currently is pop. I find that actually works best for me. You can mess around with the settings. I've come in here, customized it. And honestly, I've just come back to pop because it seems to basically make all of my music sound exactly how I want. All right, so I really only have two settings configured in here. I've come in here and I've modified the three middle ones. However, I've really found them more detrimental than helpful. So I just have them set to off. I have my loudness set to 16 and just make sure you have the toggle up here set to on. And I have my sub set to 10 and make sure you have the toggle on. Now you can come in here and adjust this side of your bass to the same as mine. However, I'm pretty sure as long as those toggles are off, it actually has no effect. So this is how I've got my head unit configured. You can match me or not, but this is probably the best settings you're gonna have without having any interior vibrations. Now you can crank these up and it'll sound a lot louder, but then things will start to rattle and it really, at least to me, sounds kind of tacky. And just irritating when you go down the road and all you hear is your truck rattling as you're trying to listen to music. So this is what I've got. And I've also got just the factory speakers right now. At some point, I probably will end up upgrading them, but at least today in the present, these are the EQ settings I've got for all of the factory speakers.
Yeah, let's go. I'ma make a couple stacks, do exactly what I want to. Mix a couple tracks, get a lady that I'm drawn to. Turn up to the max, get me faded till I'm gone, dude. I do what I want, couldn't stop me if you wanted to. I just work hard, yeah, harder than the rest. Some people say I'm lucky, others saying that I'm blessed. But I keep my head down, cause I crave progress. You ain't never gonna stop.
All right, so let's jump right into settings now. Now, one disclaimer I'm going to have for you, when you're configuring the brightnesses here, this is where you configure your general display brightness. However, a lot of people have asked, how do you actually go in and configure your night display brightness? So if you come in here to display, and you come down to night display, I recommend having this set somewhere between 35 and 45. I find that works best for me. Now, I found that by default, this is actually set to 100, which means your display is going to be just as bright during the day as it is at night. And during the day, it might not seem very bright, but trust me, at night, it'll illuminate your whole interior. So I recommend have this at least down to 35, 45. You can set it lower if you find that better for you, but at least that's where I like to have the setting. And all right, so first we'll just jump into Wi-Fi network. Now, personally, make sure you just have Wi-Fi turned off. Make sure you don't have airplane mode on, obviously. Come in here to your hotspot. Now in here, just make sure you have a hotspot toggled to on. You can come in here, customize your hotspot name. I just have mine set as Tacoma. I figure that's probably the easiest thing to do. And also make sure you come in here, customize your hotspot password, because the default Android password that'll be set here is pretty readily available on Google. So, you know, just change that just in case so somebody can't, you know, access the hotspot on your truck. And there's really not much else to change in here. Under advanced settings, you can come in, mess with your DNS settings and add a VPN, but personally, I don't use this to ever really connect to the internet, except maybe once to activate Z-Link. So honestly, don't even worry about it. Now under here, under connected devices, you want to come in here to Bluetooth. Now under the Bluetooth section, you can come in here, obviously customize your name to whatever you want. I've just got mine set as Tacoma. And then also under auto connect, ensure that's toggled on and have auto answer toggled off. I don't even know why that's an option. Nobody really wants to auto answer a call. You know, I'd like to choose if I want to answer a call or not. And then in here, you can see my iPhone's obviously paired. All right, so we'll just get out of display now. And honestly, the rest of the settings, until we get down to the bottom, these are all pretty self-explanatory. If you want to come in and modify them, you can, but I personally don't really recommend changing any of them. The only thing I recommend you do is come in here, go security, ensure that encryption is enabled. But other than that, I wouldn't worry about it. So now we'll jump into the meat and potatoes of this video. You come under here, under car settings, element settings, and then this is where you're essentially going to be able to change the colors of these buttons over here. Now I have mine set to blue just so they kind of match the interior. Now I really wish that Toyota offered the interior lights to be red, at least in maybe the TRD Pro model of the Tacoma or something, just because like the blue lights, like they're okay, but my previous two vehicles, my SI and then one of my Civics, both had red interior lights, and it was honestly just 10 times cooler than having some light blue lights in your truck. Now, hey, if you like them, cool though. All right, so in here, steering wheel keys, I actually recommend just leave this alone. I personally have not been able to get the steering wheel key remapped to work at all, so I recommend just don't even bother with this. Just leave it alone and you'll be better off. Now here under driving settings, one thing you want to make sure you have enabled is watch video is enabled while driving. I have found at one point this Android Head-Unit was reclassifying Z-Link in a previous revision as a video application, so just make sure that's checked. And then also, so wireless CarPlay doesn't have any problems, ensure allow networking while driving is enabled. Otherwise, all of a sudden, CarPlay will stop working as soon as you start to move. And obviously, nobody wants that. Now here, we'll take a look at extra settings. I have my shutdown delay set to 30 seconds instead of auto sleep right now, just because it's wintertime and I don't want to have to worry about my battery all of a sudden dying from some parasitic loss. Now, I recommend having reversing mirror off, because it'll actually end up inverting your reversing camera, and then everything essentially, you know, going left is going right and going right is going left. Now next, I just have my reversing volume set to 5. You can set it higher or lower, but I find 5 is honestly pretty decent. Now the next thing you can set is trajectory display, set to on, and that'll actually give you reversing lines that as you turn your wheel, it'll actually show your trajectory and where you're going. And maybe at the end of the video, I can showcase some of the features I have on this truck, just so, you know, you can kind of see what the experience is going to be like. Now, I have the parking radar display off. It'll actually have like a little screen that shows up over here. I personally don't really like it because you can actually just have your radar show up on your little info screen, so you don't really need that. Now, your rear view ruler, honestly, I should probably just turn that off. Now, the factory Tacoma reversing camera actually has it hard-coded in, the already reversing ruler lines that are there by default that would show up on your factory head unit. So honestly, I'll probably end up just turning this off. Now, under here, under battery voltage, you can have that set to display on. A couple people have asked in the comments on how to do that. All you have to do is just come down here in the settings, toggle that on, and then you can see your battery voltage right up there. Honestly, makes it very easy. And it's just kind of something nice to be able to quickly glance at and say, hey, what's the health of my battery? Now, before we jump into factory settings, I just want to make a very clear disclaimer. You know, obviously you're kind of doing this at your own risk, and you can very easily mess things up if you don't set your settings exactly how mine are set. And if you do end up breaking it, you end up usually having to reset your entire head unit if you seriously mess something up. So we'll just jump in here. The passcode for the Dasaita Android Head-Unit generally is going to be 126. Now, if 126 doesn't work for you, try 1234 or 4 zeros or 3 zeros. Pretty much every Android head unit I've seen has got those configured as the default passwords for factory settings. If that doesn't work, reach out to your manufacturer. And if they don't have the password, you're pretty much SOL. All right, guys, so I recommend pretty much just copy the exact settings I have here. Obviously, make sure you have CarPlay set to Z-Link, and then have your TPSM sensors set to this. Now just make sure you copy these settings exactly and don't click apply yet. What you want to do is come through, configure everything, and then click apply at the end, because it's actually going to require you to restart your head unit. Now here, you can just set your logo to whatever you want. You actually can create a custom logo, and it's essentially like a little boot animation. The problem is, I tried making one that had like a little Tacoma drive around and make some tire marks. The issue is it kind of just repeats the same thing over and over and over again as it's booting, and it looks kind of tacky, so I ended up just scrapping that idea and just went with the default Toyota logo. Now here under radio, just make sure you have it set to American 2. I find that American 2 has better reception than American 1. So just, at least in my area, set it to American 2. If it doesn't really work for you, try American 1. But if you're buying this head unit, you're really not buying it for the radio functionality. You're buying it to use with Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, or to use the Android functionality of it. You don't really want to use the radio because, honestly, the reception on it is decent, but, you know, it's not fantastic. And if you want to listen to the radio, just stick with your stock head unit. You don't need it. Now, here under voice is where you can essentially configure all of your different voice settings. Now, by default, the microphone is going to be set to, I believe, 1. Now, what will happen is when you're doing a call via Apple CarPlay, is your phone, for the first maybe 2 to 5 seconds, will actually use the mic of your phone, and then will hand it off to the head unit, I found. And so what will happen is you'll sound fine on the phone, but then all of a sudden it'll start to use the mic right here. And if this isn't set to 12, or at least a higher number than 1, you'll basically sound like you're in a cave, and, you know, people will be like, hey, I can't hear you. And it just turns into kind of a headache. And the whole reason, at least I got this head unit, so I'd never really have to touch my phone. I can just do everything straight from the head unit. I recommend just copy the settings I have. I find these work best. I've come through and I've changed them all to max volume, and some things will just kind of sound either like overly loud or will actually get distorted. So I recommend just leave these settings exactly as I have them here, and you shouldn't have any issues. Now here's the all-important CanBus settings. Now this is the whole way I was able to finally get my steering wheel controls to actually work correctly in the backwards way that Toyota configured them on the Tacoma, where the volume up and down is left and right, and then the seek track forward and back is up and down. So what you want to do is ensure you have your rudder set to left rudder, have your type set to Prado. Now make sure you have your left rudder set to this, have your CanBus set to 08 Camry / RAV4 Simple, because that's essentially the... Now make sure you have your CanBus set to 08. Now make sure you have your CanBus set to 08 Camry and RAV4 Simple. Make sure you have your rudder set to left. Have your type set to Prado KLD8. Volume adjust, have it set to 0 decibels. And then also have your key swap set to swap. And as soon as you set that to swap, your volume left and right and your seek track up and down will correctly work. Otherwise, they're going to be reversed. And if you're like me and you've finally gotten used to the backwards way Toyota did it, it's just a headache as soon as everything gets swapped around again. So I strongly recommend just leave it that way. You shouldn't have any issues. And then also just have your front door, air conditioning, and back door all set to normal. Now also I strongly recommend you leave all these set to normal. I have come in and messed with them, and I found that if you change the AC settings, you will run into some issues where your AC won't kick on using this, and it expects your CanBus to actually control that through the head unit. So I recommend just leave everything set to normal. You won't have any issues. And the main things you care about are over here on the left side. Now here under key study, you're going to be able to change essentially what each one of these buttons does for a short press, long press, and then you're also going to set essentially the edges of your screen. Now the only thing you want to touch in here is going to be touch key study. What you want to do, click the plus over here, click the plus over here, click OK. All right, so let's configure our power button. I recommend that you have a short press of the power button be mute, and a long press turn off the head unit. Then for the home button, I have my home button take me home, and then a long press in the home button will pull up my front facing camera. Back button, I just have that bring me back. Volume up, volume up, volume down, volume down. Save and exit. Want to save now? Yes. And boom, your key study's saved. Nothing really to worry about there. And you only want to use the touch key study. The panel key study I found doesn't actually configure these, and you essentially, it does nothing. So the only thing you want to use is just the touch key study in here. Now here under other, There's a couple things I came in here and modified, but for the most part, I pretty much left this all default. Now, the one thing you're going to want to do is if you have a front camera like I do, have front camera turned on, and then have brightness adjust, have that controlled by the headlights. Just makes it a lot easier. And then also, as soon as your headlights turn on around nighttime, your head unit will actually dim automatically, and it just makes it a lot more seamless. Now, this is actually a pretty cool setting. I personally don't really like it, but you can always try it out if you want. If you don't like it, you can always come in here and disable it like I did. But as soon as you go from reverse to drive or anything else, if you normally, back out of your driveway and then drive forward, you can actually have your front camera pop on automatically. Now, personally, I find it kind of annoying because I don't really need the front camera most of the time. I just have it for off-roading mainly. So I have that set to disabled. Have app install enabled. And also, I came in here under steering wheel assignment and I set SWC key for my assignment. I found that if you don't have that set, your steering wheel controls won't really work correctly. So just ensure you have that set. Panel type, just leave that set to RGB. Panel control, that means essentially when your headlights turn on, these buttons will illuminate. Pretty self-explanatory. Default power status, I just leave that set to on. I haven't really had any issues. I've seen you can change this if you do have problems to memory of last status or off. But I personally just recommend leave default power status on. Now you can also come in here, adjust your gamma for the reversing brightness of your rear camera. I personally don't really have an issue there, but if you do find it kind of dim, you can just come in here, easily adjust that, no problem. And then here you can also set your car battery voltage. I have mine set to 12 volts. And you can adjust your hue, brightness, saturation of your display. I personally just leave all of that pretty much default. Like you can come in here and it will make it a little bit brighter, but I personally just recommend leave it all at 50. You won't have much of an issue. Also, I have Bluetooth network sharing set to off. If you have this set to on, it'll cause issues with CarPlay, so I strongly recommend just leave that set to off. Now for GPS, just leave this as it is. If you do have any issues, you can come in here and modify it, but otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it. And once you go through and you've successfully configured everything to essentially match my head unit, all you have to do is click apply and then click exit. And because I didn't really make any changes, it didn't prompt me. But for you, as soon as you click apply and then click exit, it'll actually say, hey, in order to apply these settings, we need to restart your head unit. And it'll take maybe a minute or two, restart your head unit, and then you should very easily be able to have everything do exactly what you want. So now you see I do a long press there, and I've got my front camera right here. Now for your front camera, you can very easily just click this button, depending on if your camera is reversed. Now mine actually is, so every time I activate my front camera, which I only really ever use off-roading anyways, I just very quickly will come over here and click it. Now the next app we'll jump into, which is going to retain essentially all of your factory configurations. Once you've gone in and successfully set up the CanBus in your factory settings, you'll be able to come in here to control settings. And this is where you essentially will be able to set the function of your door locks, how your remote will act. So I'll just quickly go down through the settings, kind of explain why I've got mine configured the way they are. And if you want to match me, you can, or you can come in here and customize them however you'd like. Now, personally, I don't really like the double press to unlock. I like to be able to just press, lock once, press unlock once. Everything just works that way. Double pressing unlock all the time is kind of annoying. I also unlock all my doors instead of just the driver's side, because a lot of the time when I am pressing the unlock button, I'm usually over on the passenger side. I don't really feel like trying to, have to press the unlock button several times to just get in my truck. Now, also, I like having the unlock and lock feedback lights on because I actually have my TRD Pro grill lights wired up to my directionals and everything. So they'll actually flash as soon as I lock or unlock my truck. Now here you just set your volume back up. You set your unlock operation. Set your relock timer. Auto AC mode. You want to leave that on. Otherwise, you're going to have to come down here and manually turn on your AC every time you want to use it. It's kind of a pain. I have my light sensitivity set to 1. I find if it's set any higher than that, it just is always turning on. my headlights, and it's just kind of annoying. And because I have my TRD Pro lights wired up to my directionals, when I put on my right directional, they'll actually flash, and I find it, you know, generally it makes people a little bit more aware of me turning versus like just the directional on the Tacoma. Now, I personally don't really like daytime running lights, just because, hey, if I want to turn on my lights, I will. Otherwise, I'd like them to just be off, and it'll burn out the LEDs faster. Here, you just set your alert volume, set your sonar distances, you set your MPG, which is going to be viewed over here. You can also change some of these settings on the small info screen as well, but most of them are going to be over here on this radio. This is pretty much the way I recommend having your head unit configured. You know, you can very easily access the radio, front camera, vehicle info, control settings, and Z-Link, and then your amplifier settings, brightness, everything's all right here. And this is honestly all you need. You know, there's other pages of apps, but I pretty much never go to those pages. Now, as I showed earlier, if you configure your CanBus correctly in your tire pressure monitoring, you can actually come in here, go to fuel info, and like obviously right now it's not going to show anything because I haven't taken any drives. But if I go to history, yeah, it'll just show my current MPG on my refuel. And then here is where you can view my tire pressure monitoring. All right, guys, hey, thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. Comment any question you've got down below about any of the settings or any issues you have with your head unit. Also, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps to push out this video to other viewers, as well as also keep me motivated to keep making videos just like this one, because, you know, it takes a couple hours out of my weekend just to film this video, go through, edit it, and everything. And it only takes a second of your time, and it's much appreciated. Also, guys, comment down below any questions you've got, or if there's anything you think I missed, and I'll make sure to try to get back to everybody that I can. All right, guys, so this is going to be attempt 4 filming this. I'll probably leave this at like maybe the end of the video, some bloopers, but I actually ended up filming this video for like an hour, realized my phone wasn't recording, then thought I put it in airplane mode. It just connected to CarPlay, stopped recording again. So I'm just having a great time recording this video. So let's see if I can get it right maybe this time. So I just want to kind of show what the seamless experience is like. And also I want to show you what the audio volume settings and everything sound like. So here's my iPhone 12 Pro. And all I'll do is I'll start up the truck. And just like that, Apple CarPlay is connected.